What are you most ashamed of? Shortly after I was born, my father did something really bad to my 2-year-old sister, Rosemarie. He did it an unknown number of times for over 3 years until the truth came out. My mother reported it to CPS. My father was kicked out, we moved, and contact was cut. We moved to Mansfield, a town with a university in Tioga County, Pennsylvania. I was 4. My mother married again to a man named Isaac when I was 5. He enlisted in the military, and so we went to live on the other side of the country, in Washington state. We lived in 3 separate places, the most memorable being a military housing base stationed a few dozen miles away from a stunning view of Mount Rainier. I helped raise my infant brother, alongside my older and younger sister. For the next 3 years I lived in neglect and abuse, with my parents on various narcotics. They would often sleep all day and acted like, well, addicts. Always on edge. Left alone, and when we tried to make our own meals, we were punished for doing it wrong. We were punished thoroughly and often for slight misdeeds. I often just played my PS2 or watched Hannah Montana or iCarly on my sister's TV and tried to stay out of the way. Oftentimes as a fantasy I would imagine making my father proud. I knew nothing of what had happened with him and my sister. I barely had contact. I just wanted a father, my dad. I have memories of myself making my bed the best I could, thinking I could make this near illusionary parental figure proud of me. I guess it helped me escape. After 3 years, Isaac was discharged dishonorably for having substances found in his system, and we moved back to Mansfield again. I remember making a friend next door named Dylan and being happy I could go to school with a friend. And my father was finally coming to get me for visits and was allowed to be around. From my point of view, life felt great. It wouldn't last. Child Protective Services caught wind of my father in the area and warned my mother not to allow him around. Reportedly, she had kicked him out after this. One night, sometime during November of 2009, my father would enter my house intoxicated, and attempted to violate my older sister for the final time. She would have been 10. I'm fuzzy as to whether or not my sister hid it or my mother hid it, but I think 2 weeks went by because Rosemarie wanted us to enjoy our trip to a water park. She thought she would ruin it. What followed would be an evacuation of me and my siblings around the county as my mother tried to keep us out of the state's custody long enough to transport Rosemarie to Binghamton, New York, with her biological father and grandmother. I remember hiding out at my grandparents' next door, and my uncle. In this place my grandfather thought it would be appropriate to start acclimating me to the idea that showering with him was appropriate. My father is at this time, on the run from members of Latin Kings and police. He is probably realizing that his life is over. Reportedly, in the last phone call between my mother and him, he said, "I guess I should probably end my life." She replied coldly, "If I were you, I would." Those words have haunted her as a mother watching me grow without a father, but I don't blame her for that one. The night ended with us going into the state's custody. We spent a month in a foster home with 11 children total. I didn't exactly understand why at the time. But I do remember being told my father was dead. I was still in the dark about everything, so I was told he died of sadness. I'd think about that constantly, wondering if I could have changed something. Later, the state separated us into 2 foster homes. I was with my youngest sister and Rosemarie was with the baby. I was placed in a home where I felt alone. The foster parents treated me like dirt, making me eat boring foods while their kids were spoiled in front of me, or allowing her children to invade my room and steal my belongings. I remember being locked in my room and forced to write essays on infractions. I even watched my foster mother steal money out of my piggy bank. I was alone, looking after my sister in foster care with a dead father. I missed my mother every night. I felt so alone, but I buried myself in books. I was terrified of the dark, so I read books in the light and fell asleep with them on. I remember sleeping with a beaded necklace my mother gave to me on a visit, and when it broke, I sobbed for hours. I spent 16 months in that neglectful foster home, but I did get 1 month of recognition from a foster family who treated me with respect, care, and love. They even painted my room my favorite color. I love that. My mother, fighting for visitation and rights, finally won back custody. That weekend, we went to stay with a friend of hers, named Sean. This friend turns her boyfriend into a fiancé. This person's name is Sean. Sean would tell you that you did something you know you hadn't. He would put you into narcissistic no-win situations, where if you both lied and told the truth, you'd be punished severely. He was the kind to beat you and then make you believe you deserved it. Sean would hear me talking to my older sister in the morning while scooping a cat litter box, choking me up and tossing me down the stairs, because in his mind I wasn't focused. Then, if I wasn't forced to write 1,000 sentences on repeat admitting my wrongness and grounded to my bed for 2 weeks, then buy McDonald's or something similar as a cheap apology. I grew so sick of this that I would do anything to get out of the house, hanging out with friends I'd gained at school over those years. My favorite place to escape to was my grandma's, though. I could play games and eat and feel cared for there. My grandfather, having gotten me used to showering with him, would always ask me if I wanted him to wash me. He would also often touch himself way too much when washing, like he got something out of it. When I was 12, I said okay and allowed him to, in which he proceeded to touch me in the same way I'd seen him do to himself. I felt very awkward about it but put the memory away as how family acts. Years pass. One time I was punched in the rib by Sean, and suffered a cracked rib. I was begged to cover it up by my mother and did not receive medical attention, making up a lie about falling off a picnic table. I was harassed 2 days later by him for not being fit for school, and accused of acting. I hoped that he would get caught. I even got audio evidence of abuse, before Sean's son erased it. Eventually, it ended. Sean punched Rosemarie and left a bruise, and there was enough evidence and prior calls in to open a case and for us to be put into foster care again. I would be 14 here. I was put in a psych ward, and it was pinned on depression. Eventually, I was put back into foster care and returned to Mom and Sean. He promised he changed. He didn't. We were fools. We fled to Binghamton, New York. In the court case, he lied and said he abused me because I attacked my mom, which is actually what he was doing. At least 5 years lost to this guy. Then I met the love of my life, Amber. We were close friends until I took it too far, and the same thing happened again. I threatened to unalive myself in an argument regarding how we felt, and I ended up in another treatment facility at 15. I forced Amber to watch me fall apart. And I made her feel responsible. I still did not receive help for these behaviors. That's me at 21 and what I'm most ashamed of.